Hey everyone, it's Heather Nichols for Taylored Expressions. Today I'm sharing this calendar that I created with the Great Outdoors Stencil and Clear set and a few of our new calendar products. The Great Outdoors Stencil and Clear combo set includes a set of 4 layering stencils that when combined together create 4 small outdoor scenes that you can use on different projects. The Clear stamp set includes images to add to your scenes, like a deer, a bear, an eagle, and more. I'll also be using the ridged Circle Stacklets and Circle Stacklets die collections, and the ridged Hexagon Stacklets and Hexagon Stacklets die collections. I'm using the Decorative Borders die collection, and I'm using the Through the Woods stamp set with the coordinating dies. For ink colors, I'm using blueberry and blue corn, honey and sweet potato pie, toffee and mocha, avocado and olive, and Nocturne VersaFine Clair. For splatters, I'm using my bleed-proof white chocolate truffle liquid watercolor and a water brush. I'm using foam squares, my bitty blender brushes, pixie spray, and the 2024 landscape calendar along with the walnut wood display stand. Here's a closer look at the landscape calendar cards. They are 3 3/4 by 6 3/4, and of course you get one for each month of the year. The calendar is printed with a toner-based ink, so they are foilable. That's on the right side, and then there's plenty of space to add fun additions on the left side. Let's get started with stenciling. All of our layered stencil sets have numbers in the lower right-hand corner of the stencil. It's the product number with a -1, -2, -3, or -4, and this is the suggested order in which you should stencil the layers. I like to use pixie spray. I spray a thin layer on the back of my stencils to hold them in place, and then I'm layering my stencil onto a piece of 6x6 Toffee cardstock. I'm stenciling this first layer with blueberry and blue corn ink. I'm laying down the blueberry ink first, and I'm using my bitty blender brushes. You can use the standard size blender brushes as well. I've just found myself reaching for my bitty blender brushes just more and more lately. Once I have the layer of blueberry ink applied through the stencil, I used blue corn ink to add shading to the bottom edges of the stencil openings. You'll also want to make sure to get ink into the square guides so that you have an easy time lining up the next stencil layer. And then once I'm done applying the ink, I will take off that first layer of the stencil and we'll move on to layer number 2. I used the stencil square guides to line up the stencil for the second layer, and then I am applying ink through this layer using honey ink, and then I'm shading that with sweet potato ink. For this third stencil layer, I started off with toffee ink, and then I added shading with mocha ink. I just really love seeing these images come to life with each layer that you do. And then we just have one more layer here. This is the 4th layer, and I am laying down avocado ink first and then adding shading with olive ink. Taking that last stencil off reveals those finished scenes. There's 4 little scenes that you can use on projects. I love how these turned out. And of course I have to add splatters to my scenes, so I am using chocolate truffle liquid watercolor. I put it on an acrylic block and pick it up with my water brush, and then tap the brush over my finger to add the splatters. And then I'm also using the Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white to add white splatters, picking up the ink on my water brush and doing the same thing, tapping it on my fingers to splatter the white onto my scenes. Next, let's cut out these scenes. I cut the scenes apart with a pair of scissors and then used the coordinating Circle Stacklets and Hexagon Stacklets dies. I lined the dies up around the scenes, held everything in place with Scotch removable tape, and then sent them through my die cut machine to cut them out. Next, I cut out mats to frame each of the scenes from olive and honey cardstock. First, I impressed the dies from the ridged Circle Stacklets and ridged Hexagon Stacklets die collections into the cardstock. Then I used the coordinating Circle Stacklets and Hexagon Stacklets dies to cut out the impressed design. I love the extra texture that those ridged stacklets add to these frames. To give the scenes just a little bit more of a finished look, I used mocha ink with my bitty blender brush, and I added shading around the outside of each of the scenes. Next, I cut out borders for the bottom of each of my calendar cards using the Decorative Borders die collection. There are dies that cut out the entire border with an impressed design, and there also are ones that just impress the design into your project. I'm cutting out 2 of the borders from olive and honey cardstock. I stamped trees from the Through the Woods stamp set to use on my calendar cards. I chose the 3 smallest trees to use, and I set these up in my MISTI with a piece of toffee cardstock. Once I close the lid of the MISTI to pick up the stamps, I'll ink the trees up with Avocado ink. I'll stamp these onto the Toffee cardstock by closing the lid of the MISTI, and then I decided to add a little shading to the bottom of the trees using olive ink. So I'll ink up just the bottom of the trees with the olive ink, and then at the top part of the inked portion on the stamp, I'll tap it with my blender brush to soften the color transition. Once my trees are stamped, I'll cut them out with the coordinating dies. Okay, let's put these calendar cards together. I'm showing you 4 of the months of the year. I'm doing August, September, October, and November. I feel like the colors I used are definitely more in the late summer or fall feel, and I'll do more of these scenes in different colors to reflect the different seasons of the year to finish my calendar off. Okay, so now I am attaching each of the scenes to each of the mats for each calendar page, and then I'm using the clear stamps in the set to add additional elements to my scene. There's a bear and a deer and an eagle and some trees, and so I'm just picking and choosing different things to put into the various scenes, and I'm stamping them using an acrylic block with Nocturne VersaFine Clair ink. I'm adding the borders to the bottoms of the calendar cards, and these are just a little bit longer than the cards, so once I get them adhered in place, I'll use a pair of scissors to trim the ends even with the sides of the card. I tested the cards out in the walnut wood display stand just to see where I should adhere my scenes on my calendar page, and once I had that figured out, I used my adhesive to adhere them to each of the pages. I added one of the trees to each of the pages using foam adhesive to pop it up for a bit of extra dimension. And now this group of calendar pages is complete. I love how these turned out. Here's a closer look at each of the months, and also a closer look at what they look like in the walnut wood display stand. This calendar would be great for the men in your life. It also would be great for anybody who loves the out of doors. I could see this being super cute in a cabin or a camper or any place with a woodsy decor. I hope you enjoyed learning how I created this calendar with the Great Outdoors Stencil and Clear combo set, and I hope you learned something new. You can find the supplies that I used to create this project at the Taylored Expressions web store at tayloredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time.